Hi, Algebra 1 students. This is Mrs. Kerr. I'm going to be giving you notes on factoring out a monomial. So make sure you get a piece of paper, label it Factoring Out a Monomial Notes, and you are going to be taking notes as I go through it on the computer, and this will be an assignment for you. So it says I can factor out a monomial. Remember, monomial means one term from a polynomial, and then write the simplified version of the polynomial. So we need to remember that factoring, in this case, is a number or quantity that when multiplied with another produces a given number or expression. So one thing that's really important is to recall the quotient rule. So this is a rule from the exponent properties. When you divide and you have a variable that is the same base, you need to minus the numerator exponent from the denominator exponent. So it would be a minus b. So for example, if we have x to the fifth divided by x to the third, that would equal x to the fifth, and then we would minus the exponent of 3. So then it would be x squared. So always do the numerator first and then the denominator. Now, the rules of factoring, and if you use some type of website, they may not follow these rules, but we need you to. You must factor a term, any term, even if that is a 1. Some things are not factorable, but for this lesson, if it's not factorable, please just take out a 1. The leading coefficient, the first number of the first term must be positive. So if the leading coefficient's positive, then you're going to divide it by a positive. If the leading coefficient's negative, then you're going to divide by a negative. You must factor each term evenly. What that means is you cannot have a decimal or fractions when you're simplified. And then most importantly, and this is what like a GCF calculator will not do, you just need to remember this. If all terms have the same variable, you will factor out the variable with the smallest exponent. And we will get into that in around example 3. So in example 1, we have a binomial. We have 8x squared plus 18. So factoring means that we are going to find the factors of the number first. So the factor of 8 and 18 is what we're looking for. Now we need to find the greatest common factor. Always have to find the greatest, okay? So I have this calculator which your teachers will share with you to find the greatest common factor of 8 and 18. So all you have to do is type in 8, 18, and it will calculate. Now notice it breaks it down for you. It says the factors of 8 are 1, 2, 4, and 8. And then the factors of 18 are 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. Well, we need to find the biggest number that has in common. Notice that 1 is all in common, but so is 2. So the greatest common factor of 8 and 18 is 2. So we're going to set up a division problem. So the greatest common factor of the 8 and 18, like I said, is 2. But then we have to look closer. We need to look at the variables. In our first term, we have x squared. But notice in our second term, we do not have any x's. So they do not share any x's. So our greatest common factor of this binomial is 2. So we're going to put the 2 here, and then we're going to set up our parentheses. Now you're actually going to divide. What is 8 divided by 2? It is 4. Notice x squared we're not doing anything with, so we drop it down. Now, what is a positive 18 divided by 2? You get a positive 9. So then this is going to be our answer. We factored out a 2, and we were left with 4x squared plus 9. Now, if you actually multiply that 2 back in, you are going to get back to the original problem. Okay? Now, if you could, pause it for a moment, all right, and try your turn 1 by yourself. Now, hopefully you did pause it, because it's really important for you to actually try this on your own. If you didn't, or you're checking your answer, you want to look at the numbers first. So we are trying to find the greatest common factor of 6 and negative 27. Now notice the first term is a positive 6, but the second term is negative. We are going to divide by a positive because it's a positive 6. Now, notice right here on this calculator, it does not accept negatives. Okay, so that's where you have to know if you're going to divide by a positive or you're going to divide by a negative, which we'll go further into that. Now, the factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. The factors of 27 are 1, 3, 9, and 27. So the biggest factor that's in common is a 3. Notice I'm choosing a positive 3 because 6 was positive. Now you want to look at the variables. The first term has an x squared. The second term has nothing. It has no variable. Since they do not share a variable, the greatest common factor is just the number 3. Now you want to divide it. A positive 6 divided by 3 is a positive 2, and drop down the x squared. And then negative 27 divided by 3 is just a minus 9. So once again, that is your answer. If you redistributed, 3 times 2x squared gets you 6x squared. 3 times negative 9 gets you that negative 27 that we started with. Now, notice this time I gave you a negative first and then just a positive. Remember, this calculator does not read negatives. So I'm just going to put in 20 and then 5. Now it says that the greatest common factor is 5. If you don't put a negative 5, you will be marked incorrect because you have to remember rule number 2. If the leading coefficient is negative, then you have to divide by negative. So negative 20, so this is going to be a negative 5. Look at the variable. We have an x to the third. We don't have any x's, so our greatest common factor is just negative 5. Negative 20 divided by negative 5 is a positive 4, x to the third. 5 divided by negative 5 is minus 1. And then once again, that is our answer. The greatest common factor is our monomial that's on the outside of the parentheses. And what's inside the parenthesis is what's left. All right. Once again, please hit pause and try to do your turn. All right, so the greatest common factor, notice the website says 6, but we need to be smarter than the website. Our leading coefficient's negative, so we have to make this negative. Once again, we're looking at the variables. We have x squared, and then we have nothing. Since we don't have any x's in common, the greatest common factor is just negative 6. And then we divide. Negative 18 divided by negative 6 is a positive 3, x squared. 12 divided by negative 6 is a minus 2. So then that is our answer. We have a monomial on the outside, and then what's left is inside the parentheses. Now, something that you should be noticing, when we're dividing, we are dividing by the same number. It's negative 6, and that number, or that term rather, appears on the outside of the parenthesis. That is the case for every single problem we've done. So make sure that your work is exactly like this. This is what your Algebra 1 teachers are going to be looking at. All right. Now, we are going to find the greatest common factor of a trinomial. So this calculator can do 3 numbers. Remember, don't put in any negatives. All right. So it lists all the factors of all 3 numbers, and the greatest number is 2. Now, remember our second rule. Our first term was negative, so we have to make it negative 2. Now, you want to look at the variables. Does every term share an x? Yes, it does. We have x times x 5 times for the first term. We have x to the third for the second term. And then we have x squared for the second term. Now, look how many they share. They all have 1x, and now they all have x squared. So we can take x squared out of each term. Now, remember what I mentioned before. My bottom, the factoring out of the monomial, is the same every time I write it. Now we divide. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3. Now this is the part where you need to remember the exponent rules. X to the 5th divided by x to the 2nd, we're minusing the exponents. So that's x to the 3rd. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a positive 1. X to the 3rd divided by x squared is just x to the 1. 18 divided by negative 2 is a minus 9. X squared divided by x squared, you minus those, it's really x to the 0, but you don't have to rewrite that. Also, if you do not like writing the 1 as an exponent or the 1 as the coefficient, you do not need to. You could just write it as a positive x. If you redistributed that negative 2x squared, you would get the same trinomial you did before. All right, please pause it. Try your turn number 3 on your own. All right, let's see if you're correct. Now we have 3 terms. Let's look at the numbers. Now we have 24, we have 6, and remember this does not do negatives, and 12. So the greatest common factor that this website says is 6. Now, you want to look here. This is a positive 24, so we're going to be taking out a positive 6. Then you want to look at the exponents. We have x to the 4th, x squared, and x to the 1. So the smallest exponent is x to the 1. So then that's the monomial that we can factor out. And now you just go down the line for every term and just divide. 24 divided by 6 is 4. X to the 4th divided by x to the 1 is x to the 3rd, because you're minusing the exponents. 6 divided by 6 is a positive 1. X squared divided by x to the 1 is just x. Negative 12 divided by 6 is a minus 2. And then the x to the 1 divided by x to the 1 really just cancels out. Sorry, that should be a parenthesis. All right. Now, the hardest thing that you have to do here for this problem, for example 4, is taking your time and doing all variables and all numbers. So you want to find the greatest common factor of 6, 2, and 18. So we have 6, 2, and 18. So the greatest common factor is 2. Now, our first term is negative. So it's going to be a negative 2. And then you want to do each variable. All right, we have x to the 3rd. We have x squared. We have x squared. So you're going to do an x squared because that's the smallest exponent. And then you want to look at the next variable. We have y to the 5th, y to the 3rd, and just y. So then we just have a y because that is the smallest exponent for y. Please note that all of these monomials that we're factoring out are the same. And now we just divide. Take your time. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 gets you 3. X to the 3rd divided by x squared gets you x. Y to the 5th divided by y gets you y to the 4th. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 gets you that positive 1. X squared and x squared goes away, and we're left with y squared. And then 18 divided by negative 2 gets you minus 9. X squared and x squared goes away. Y and y goes away. So all you're left with for that last term is minus 9. All right. And for your last turn, hopefully you're checking it. Hopefully you hit pause. So the three numbers, 30, 12, and 3, the greatest common factor, remember the biggest number, would be a 3. Now this is correct. It is a positive 3 because 30 was positive. And then you want to look at each variable individually. So we have c to the 5th, c to the 4th, c to the 3rd. Pick the one with the smallest exponent, so c to the 3rd. Then we have d to the 9th, d to the 8th, d to the 7th. So the smallest exponent is d to the 7th. Notice all my monomials that I'm factoring out are the same. So we have 3c to the 3rd, d to the 7th. And now we just divide. 30 divided by 3 is 10. C to the 5th divided by c to the 3rd gets you c squared. And then we get d squared, because d to the 9th divided by d to the 7th is d squared. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. C to the 4th divided by c to the 3rd gets you just a regular c. And then d to the 8th divided by d to the 7th gives you a regular d. And then lastly, 3 divided by 3 is a positive 1. And then c to the 3rd divided by c to the 3rd goes away. D to the 7th divided by d to the 7th also goes away. So then this is our final answer.